Hey guys, Tim from Red Goat Garage here. About a month ago, my wife picked up a new hauler. Not a fan of the minivans, so she picked up a Cadillac Escalade ESV. So it's basically a Suburban, and this is the GMT 900 platform. And I've been driving it. Thing's really nice. It rides like a Cadillac, no pun intended. Has a 6.2 liter LS under the hood. Really awesome car, but the one thing that I have not been super happy with is the braking on it. So obviously it's a big heavy vehicle and it has 22-inch wheels from the factory, but the brakes, the rotors are really small on this. So let me turn around here and I'll show you. So this is her new whip, if you will. It's a pretty sweet ride, but I mean, look at the size of the wheel, and if you can see way back down there, that little tiny rotor, the little caliper, all that, just really small. You could barely see it behind the wheels. And I started doing some research on upgrading the brakes. So there's a couple companies that make a replacement rotor that's just drilled and slotted, and I thought, okay, I could do that and do some new pads maybe. And then I saw there's a couple companies that make conversion kits where you can do a whole new caliper. There's a guy out there like on Facebook he's figured out, if you take a caliper from this vehicle and use these rotors, and you can kind of mix and match and get a bigger caliper and rotor under there. And I looked at all those options, but I didn't really want to do that much work or spend that much money on it either. Like I said, it stops okay, but just not that terribly great. So I thought there's got to be something kind of in between where I can get way better braking performance, but without breaking the bank. And so what I found was this setup here from Bayer Brakes. Now, I've been a big Bayer fan for a long time. The Chevelle that's under this cover has Bayer brakes, and some of my other projects have Bayer brakes on there. So it's a brand that I know and trust. And so I started looking up and found that they have this setup for the Suburbans and it's the trucks and everything, that GMT 900 platform. So this is what they call their Errata Speed line. And this was what's really cool about it. So at first glance, you're like, hey, drilled and slotted. Okay, well, I can get that anywhere. These are actually way bigger than the factory rotors. So you can actually upgrade and get a much larger rotor so it has better braking, but without having to actually replace the caliper. So they include new caliper brackets that move that caliper out to accept this new larger rotor. So that's super awesome. And here's the rear setup for it. They do offer a complete braking kit with 2-piece rotors and a 6-piston monoblock caliper and all that, but that's if you're really getting into hardcore like racing type stuff, and we're just cruising around with the kids and whatnot, so don't need anything crazy. So this is what I bought, was just this upgrade, front and rear. You can reuse the factory pads because it still uses the factory calipers, but I figured, well, why not get my best bang for the buck? And I went ahead and bought some of their pads to go with it. So they offer a couple different variations of pads depending on kind of what you're doing. But I just said, hey, I'm just cruising around and with the wife and kids and things like that, and so I don't need some really aggressive brake pad on there. I just need something nice. So this is what they sent me with, which is I guess the fronts are a D1363 and the rears are a D1194. So I mean, and like I said, playing with performance cars with Bayer brakes, I know that a difference in just changing pads alone can make a huge difference in braking. But again, I didn't want a really aggressive pad. I just wanted something nice for a daily driver status. So what I'm going to do right now is pull off the wheels and start the install. I'm kind of on an incline here, so I'm going to just do one side at a time so I can block the other side. But I'm going to show you what it looks like. So let's start with getting the wheel off and getting that original rotor off, and we can kind of show you a side-by-side comparison. All right, let's start with the install. First step is I blocked the car, jacked it up, and we're going to do the rest right now, so you guys can watch along. So they have Loctite on them from the factory. So even if they've been off, they can still be tight. Okay, next step is you got to remove this little keeper right here. It's a Torx bit. One thing is on the Bayer rotors, it does not have this, and this is only to keep the rotor up against the hub during installation of the brakes. That's the only reason that they have that, so no big deal that it's not there on the Bayer ones. These might be a little rusted, so just gonna tap it off. So that's what you need to start with in order to start the Bayer errata speed installation. So let me go show you what it looks like. Okay, here is the old rotor versus the new rotor. So you can see there's about a 2-inch diameter difference there, plus drilled and slotted to help with brake fade and all that good stuff. But just a size comparison alone, it's a huge upgrade between the two. I mean, obviously this one's old and rusty, so you can't knock it for that, but this is a huge upgrade. So let me get it installed and I'll show you what it looks like. So first things first, we're going to take this rotor and slide it on here. Now, one thing you might be looking at and going, gee Tim, you're an idiot. The slots and drill, you know, the holes, there's directional. So most brake applications, they go backwards, but on Bayer's they go forward. And really it doesn't matter, like from a performance standpoint, which way is which. What it really matters with is these internal vanes. And if you can see them, they kind of are facing backwards, and that's what you want. So when this is spinning, when you're going down the road, it's allowing that hot air from the internal, from inside the rotor to exit. That's what's important, not what the direction of these slots are. But on Behrs, they always face forward, which kind of screws up a lot of people, because I think most other manufacturers that I've ever seen, they all go backwards, but Behrs go forwards. But like I said, if you ever need to question it, just look at the internal vanes. And since Behrs are directional, they're not, some rotors, especially like original replacement ones, the vanes are just straight up and down, so it doesn't matter which way. But on Behrs, they're arced backwards to help facilitate that air moving out. So that's first step, is to slide that guy on. Our next step is to install the caliper bracket. Now, the original one, you got to pull the pins out and slide those in here into the new ones. What do you guys need? And then you just install this just like a factory one. Next step is the little caliper or the brake pad clips. Behrs supplies new ones for the front, and these guys just pop right on in. They can only go one way. They're the same top or bottom, but these will prevent your brakes from squeaking. Then you just take, these are the new Behrs pads. We're going to take these guys and slap them in there. Now, these rotors are maximum thickness because they're brand new. The pads are maximum thickness because they're brand new. So I got to push the pistons back in this caliper. And I don't really have a good way to show you on the camera, but basically, let me show you if I can do this one-handed. I'm going to take a C-clamp and, sorry, it's bouncing all over the place. I'm going to take a C-clamp like this, and I'll squeeze this one back, and then I'll take a pair of channel locks and I'll squeeze this one back, and they need to be basically pushed all the way in order to fit over this. I see I'm dripping out some brake fluid there. So once we get done, I'm going to double check the brake fluid level and top it off. It might have been a little high, but so now that that's done, now it's just a matter of sliding this guy back on here. Let me set this camera back up. there you have it. So there's the new Bayer Arataspeed setup. So like I said, 2-inch diameter difference, better pads than factory, but it still used the factory caliper, didn't have to bleed the brakes. So from the time I started this video, without speeding it up or anything, it's about 15 minutes. That included me taking off the wheel. So like 15 minutes aside, you can, you know, let's just say, let's call it 40 minutes, your, you know, front brakes could be dramatically upgraded. That doesn't even include doing the rear brakes. But I mean, look at it. I'm excited to see what it looks like with the wheel on. So let me do that now. We'll pop the wheel back on there and have a look, and then we'll go tackle the rear brakes. Check that out. Like in motion status. That's pretty sweet right there. Definitely helps fill out the wheel. You can see the rotor now behind the wheel where you couldn't before. Drilled and slotted, and no bleeding the brakes. It's the best part. Sweet. Well, now let's move to the back. Alright, so here's the rears. Little dinky rotors. These ones really aren't that much bigger. They are a little bit, but they're also drilled and slotted, so look better, they'll stop better in the new pads. So let's see how long it takes me to do these guys. What? So this, whoever was here before me has these little push clips. It could be a pain in the butt, but same basic principle as the little screws. They're just there to help keep the rotor on during installation. Once the wheel is on, they basically zero purpose. These, if you can get them, you basically just kind of have to demo them off. You can't really undo them. Okay, so on these guys, there's a 13 millimeter right here that needs to come off, and then it's another 18 or 19 or whatever that holds the caliper bracket to the rear end. So first things first, so we'll pop these guys off and get the caliper out of the way. Like a little drum brake, and the new rotors still utilize that, so we're good there. So let's get the installation started. So these caliper brackets, the front one's the little rubber boot, dust boot was already installed. The rear ones, they aren't. They supplied, but they're not pre-installed for whatever reason. So you just gotta take them and pop them on there, no big deal. Just like that. Then we'll take these pins, slide them in there. These ones have a good amount of grease on them. If yours are dry, put some fresh grease on them. So then we'll pop this guy in place. The little dust shield that's behind here, the little ear that's sticking out was just barely touching that bracket. So you can kind of see, I just folded it back real quick. No big deal. And we'll take our 18 millimeter and tighten this guy down. Okay, so there's a new rotor, new caliper bracket. We have to put the little clips in there from that hold the brake shoes. They do not, the rear ones do not come with new ones. So we're gonna pop off these old ones here and reuse them. So same thing as the front. You can kind of see where it's rubbed right there. That's where the brake pad rides, and that's what's preventing it from squeaking when you're driving. So these guys just pop into place. Like that. I mean, there's only one way they can go. Let me get the other one going here. All right. I'll just slap our new brake pads in. These ones actually say Bayer on them. Pretty cool. So, there's new brake pads. Next, just got to pop the rotor back on. All right, there we go. So it's been about 20 minutes to get to this point. So what I'm going to do now is get the wheel on, get it lowered back down. We're going to torque all the wheels down, put the caps back on, and I'll show you what that looks like. But already, like, what a difference, just not only visually, but you know, the bigger rotor, the drilled and slotted, the new brake pads. I'm excited to see the difference in braking power. But let me get everything buttoned up here and then I'll show you what it looks like. All right, I am all done. So there's the fronts all installed, and the rears all installed. Now I went ahead and did the other side, so I'm into this whole job maybe 2 hours the most, so pretty easy. So let me turn around so you can see me. There we go. Hey, if you read the instructions, which you absolutely should, there's a very specific process for seasoning the rotors and bedding the pads. Now they in the instructions they kind of say, like, you know how when you pour water over ice. All right guys, so it's been a few weeks since I did the install of the Radispeed rotors on my wife's Escalade, and that's what I'm in right now. And the reason it's been a few weeks, even though it's been mere seconds on your end, is that I wanted to properly break in the brakes. Now if you read the instructions, there is a lot of instructions on the proper way, so you really need to season the rotors and break in the pads. So what that really means is the rotors are cast steel or whatever, right? So they have built up like energy in them, and how the instructions kind of like equated it was, you know, if you take an ice cube and you pour your soda over it, you can hear it cracking. That's kind of what like is inside these rotors. And so they said basically you just need to break them in, and there's instructions in there. You know, drive it, you do some 0 to 60 or 60 to 0 stops and things like that. You get them real hot, then you let them cool, and like there's a whole thing. So I mean, the other thing you can do is just drive it for a couple 100 miles, and that's really what I've done. So since buying this car, put about 1,000 miles on it. So I was pretty, you know, aware of how well this thing stopped, especially like an emergency stop, things like that. But I can tell you, even without doing any sort of formal testing, just driving around, these new pads and rotors have made a big difference. So I've put a couple 100 miles on the car now since I did the Radispeed rotors and Bayer pads, and it definitely just, even, you know, little things like right now I'm coming up to a stop sign, and you can definitely tell the amount of effort you have to put into the brake pedal is way less. So I'm happy right off the bat with just everyday cruising around, because so this is obviously not a race car of any sort. So this is all where we drive it for, is the family car, right? But I still wanted to stop a little bit better, especially when it's loaded down with my wife and my kids. So the other thing, you know, when you're doing that is it's breaking in the brake pads itself. So they have to, and there's a whole science to it, and I can't remember exactly how it all works, but I mean, they have to adhere to the shape and irregularities within that rotor. So they have to do their thing too. So I mean, again, best way to do that is to just go out and drive the thing, you know. And so I'm gonna try and do some little bit of formal testing here, see what happens. I did do some before testing, some 60 to 0, and now I'm going to try to do it again now that it has these new pads and rotors, and see if I can see any you know, difference within a stopwatch, as accurate as I can do it, you know, just by myself without a formal testing facility. So let me do that and show you guys what I came up with, if I was accurate enough to see any sort of difference, or, you know, measurable difference. I mean, like I said, I know I can feel it, and I don't think it's just in my head either. You know, I can feel it in the brake pedal, just driving. You can definitely feel it. So it'd be nice if I can see, like on the stopwatch, you know, shaving off some time. So let me go try that right now and show you what I guys came up with. So I just did some 60-0 runs here, and hard to get an accurate reading when it's just me trying to hold the camera and pushing start and stop on my cell phone. But the best I can see it is anywhere between 1/4 to 1/2 second faster with these new Bayer Arataspeed rotors. So I'm sure I could probably do the math and figure out how much of a stopping distance difference that is. But I try to do it on the exact same road, the exact same spots, you know, same amount of fuel in the car, you know, the temperature about the same. Try to make it as consistent as I could, but again, it's really hard to get a true accurate reading there. So either way, there's definitely an improvement, especially driving. You can just tell driving that there's a massive improvement. I'm sure too, if you have a carload of people and gear in the back and everything else where you're really working out the brakes, you'll be able to make a big you'll be able to tell a big difference there when the brakes really get some heat in them and get used really well. So thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate it. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe. Make sure to check out Bayer brakes. Like I said, I've had them on my Chevelle for years and love them. Got them on this thing now and love them. They make these Arataspeed rotors for a bunch of different applications for modern, you know, trucks, Fords, and GM vehicles and stuff like that. So give them a shout and see what they got. And thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.